With 2.7 abysses out, and we find ourselves wondering about the same things yet again. I find myself thinking this is such an easy abyss like all other abysses before it. Don't get me wrong, I have never complained about any iteration of this abyss. In fact, they were never hard, they were all cakewalks. In fact, I'd say I want there to be more of a challenge in it, but in a different way. And today we'll talk about the 2.7 abyss and what could have been instead. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening YouTube, it's your Slime King, the Gma Man, and welcome to another video. This is a raw but edited take on the 2.7 abyss and why it could have been what the Perilous trail is today. But before we get into that, first let's explore what this iteration of the abyss is all about. And 12.1, Chamber 1, is filled yet again with Whopper flowers, and now this time added with 2 Geo Vishaps. Honestly, nothing much is to be said here except Whopper flowers are annoying, especially if you don't have Anemo units. And same can be said for the other side, which is yet another boring instance of Ruin Guards and Ruin Graders. Now 12.2 first half is probably the most annoying floor of all of this abyss. It spawns 3 shielded Metatrolls at the start. That is very annoying as it feels like the only move they like to do is charge, and charge away from you. Seriously, frick you. And then there's the second wave that has 2 Cryo Auras under the Frost Lava Churl and the Cryo Slime. And the former spits out an Ice Mist and the latter a Frost Cage. This can be difficult if you can't burst the slime fast enough. But to be honest, you shouldn't have a problem, as long as you have a healer, or a shielder, or overwhelming pyro application. Again, this floor is just annoying with how the AI likes to act, and nothing else. For the second half, it's merely Kenki. We've seen this before, though I would have preferred Kenki to be on first half of Chambers, simply because I want to reset and get perfect runs against Kenki. But with how the abyss is set up, it just becomes annoying, as you have to go through Charge City every single freaking time. For 12.3, it's probably the easiest floor. 2 Bathismal small boys that can be destroyed in sub 20 seconds. And the PMA, again, for the same reason as Kenki, I'd rather the bosses were at the first halves of each chamber so that I can reset to my heart's content. And because of that, this abyss to me just became more annoying, more so because of the potential it could have been in terms of repeatability. The units that are good in this abyss are the same units that have been good in most abysses, except Freeze, of course. I mean, you can still run Freeze, but it's not going to be as brain dead as usual, as there are obviously bosses that cannot be frozen, and there's also 12.2 Chamber 1, where there's cryo everywhere, basically. So, Hu Tao's single target still reigns supreme, Venti's AoE is still good, Shangling National is Shangling National, and there's not much in terms of team building in this abyss as usual. And this brings me to the whole crux of this video. This abyss could have been so much better if they implemented it like how they did the Perilous Trail event. This event is somewhat of a roguelike dungeon that you enter, and once you clear a floor, you are forced to sub out units you've used on that floor, and they will be unavailable for either the whole run or for 2 floors. This is a great concept in it of itself, as it enables critical thought as to what teams you can use. This is a similar thing to a ban and pick system that enables strategy in terms of what teams you should use now and what teams you should use next. Not only that, but you also have to take into consideration when you can use those said units again and when you would even need those units for other rounds. This gives incentives to build units you otherwise would not have built, instead of sticking to the tried and true National, Ayuk Freeze, Morgana, or what may frickin' have you. You pair that with the RNG nature of enemies you can encounter in each round, and you have this balancing act of trying to understand which unit holds more value based on what enemies you think might show up next. It gives you a reason to use units that otherwise would not see the light of day. It gives another facet to team building that makes it feel like this should have been the evolution of the abyss instead of what we have going on right now. It's simple RNG based systems, but it is also what has been proven to work in many games that have high replayability. And maybe it's time Genshin has taken advantage of their sublime combat system. There's also the card system that consists of various buffs and modifiers that allow you to make teams that were previously unable to meet the damage threshold for clears, but are now able to because of this. It adds another layer of not only complexity, but also fun, as you can experiment with different teams and units. And again, that goes back to my point. the team building is greatly diversified. For example, Shao usually can't compete with Hu Tao in single target, but in instances where I just use Hu Tao for a single target round, and the next round or the next round after it just so happens to be single target focused as well, then I can simply pump Shao up with buffs from cards that either increase crit damage, anemo damage, or attack percent, and the loss of having Hu Tao banned becomes blunted. Lastly, to platinum the 4th dungeon, which is the hardest by the way, you need to complete 6 rounds of combat time in under 8 minutes. Yes, I know, this is a DPS check, but it allows you to have goals set for yourself and a certain baseline for what your teams need to be able to do in order to platinum a dungeon. This means that since there are 18 combat rounds, you need to complete each combat phase in under 27 seconds to achieve platinum. There are no rewards, it is simply proving that whatever team you came up with can platinum clear the dungeon. And that paired with the randomness of enemies, the card system, now you have a game mode that can be replayed several times for some good old-fashioned fun. This is what the Abyss should have been, or at the very least, a game mode that rotates in buffs, debuffs, and enemies every week. Tell me what you think down in the comments below, or better yet, come at me at twitch.tv/TheGMaman, where I stream Genshin almost every day. Join the Slime Kingdom Discord, where I feed you slime condensate every day. And this is our parting. Farewell.